I still remember the night my dignity was shattered under the very roof where I thought I'd finally find love and respect. My name is Ethan Miller. I grew up in a modest neighborhood outside of Chicago, raised by parents who taught me the value of hard work, discipline, and chasing dreams bigger than my paycheck. After college, I landed a decent job in a corporate office downtown. The salary wasn't anything to brag about, but it paid the bills and gave me a sense of pride. I wasn't rich, but I was independent, and to me, that mattered more than anything. When I married Jessica, I thought I was the luckiest man alive. She was stunning, graceful, and came from a wealthy family. Her father was a respected businessman, and her brother, Ryan, owned a thriving clothing company with stores across several states. To me, it didn't matter how rich they were. I believed Jessica had chosen me because of who I was, because of the fire I carried inside me to make something of myself. But the cracks started to show just weeks after our wedding. Jessica wasn't impressed by ambition, unless it was tied to a fat paycheck. My simple lifestyle, my average salary, and the small apartment we lived in seemed beneath her. At first, she made small remarks, playful on the surface, but sharp enough to sting. "Ethan, your paycheck couldn't even buy me one designer purse. How are we supposed to keep up? You really think this 9 to 5 is going to get us anywhere? When are you going to start thinking bigger?" I laughed it off, thinking marriage took time to adjust. I told myself she'd come around, that she'd see the value in building something slowly. But instead, her criticisms grew harsher. At family gatherings, she didn't hesitate to use me as the punchline of her jokes. Look at Ryan. By 27, he had already built his own company from scratch. And my husband? Well, he spends his days filing reports and answering emails. Isn't that right, Ethan? Everyone chuckled politely. I forced a smile, but inside, shame burned like acid. Then one evening, Jessica stopped pretending altogether. She looked me dead in the eye and said the words that would haunt me for months. "Ethan, I'll only respect you when you stop wasting your time in that pathetic job and join my brother's business. At least there, you might learn how real men succeed. Until then, don't expect me to treat you like anything more than an average nobody." Her words cut deeper than any knife. That night, I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, realizing that to Jessica, I wasn't a partner. I was a disappointment. A week later, worn down by her relentless pressure, I caved. I quit my job and joined Ryan's company. The decision felt like I was swallowing glass, but Jessica finally smiled at me again, and I thought maybe, just maybe, it would be worth it. Ryan welcomed me into his company with a grin that dripped arrogance. Well, Ethan Miller finally wants to learn from the big leagues," he said, clapping me on the back. "Don't worry, I'll find something for you to do. Try not to screw it up." From day one, it was clear I wasn't family in his eyes. I was charity. Ryan gave me meaningless assignments, busy work that no one else wanted. Whenever I suggested an idea, he brushed it off with a smirk. "Leave the thinking to people who actually know business, Ethan." Meetings turned into arenas where Ryan used me as his personal punching bag. If I made a presentation, he'd interrupt with sarcastic questions until I stumbled. If I made a mistake, even a small one, he exaggerated it in front of the team. Jessica, instead of defending me, sided with him. "See? This is why I wanted you to learn from Ryan. He actually knows what he's doing." Every evening, I drove home with my pride crushed a little more. But late at night, when Jessica was asleep, I sat alone at my desk with my laptop. I couldn't let my life shrink down to nothing. I poured my anger, my humiliation, my desperation into research. I studied markets, tech startups, and new business trends. Slowly, an idea began to form, a vision that could change everything. One evening, after Ryan mocked me in front of the entire boardroom by calling me the company's charity case, I made a decision. Enough was enough. I wasn't going to argue with them, beg them, or prove my worth under their shadow. I was going to build something of my own, something they could never ignore. In secret, I began working on a startup. I used what little savings I had and launched a small online platform that connected independent American artisans with global buyers. It was risky, it was uncertain, but it was mine. Every night, while Jessica believed I was catching up on office work. I was coding, strategizing, and planning. I told no one, not even my closest friends. Meanwhile, the humiliation at Ryan's company continued. He would toss files onto my desk with a smirk. Here, maybe this is simple enough for you. Jessica grew colder too. Ethan, maybe Ryan's right. You just don't have what it takes. Why can't you accept that? Her words no longer crushed me. They fueled me. Every insult was gasoline on the fire burning inside me. The first few weeks after launching my platform were brutal. No sales. No traction. Doubt gnawed at me. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was just a dreamer with no real ability. But then one morning my phone buzzed with an email. A customer in Germany had placed an order. A week later, another from California. Slowly, the traffic grew. Artisans began signing up. Buyers started to notice. What had been a flicker turned into a flame. While Ryan mocked me in boardrooms, somewhere across the world, a craftsman's handmade product was being shipped because of my platform. And that knowledge was enough to keep me going. Then came the turning point. A venture capitalist in New York noticed my platform and reached out. They wanted to invest. I almost dropped my phone when I read the email. Months of sleepless nights, of pouring every ounce of my soul into this project. It was finally paying off. The deal started moving forward. Suddenly, the side project I built in secrecy was on its way to becoming a legitimate company. But success doesn't stay hidden forever. One night, Jessica walked into the room while I was on a late call with the investor. She caught just enough of the conversation to realize something was going on. Her eyes narrowed. What the hell are you doing, Ethan? Don't tell me you've been wasting your time on some little hobby, while my brother is giving you a real career. For a moment, I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to show her the empire I was building beneath her nose. But then I saw the disdain on her face, the same disdain I'd seen for months, and I stopped myself. I just smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry about it, Jessica. You wouldn't understand." She scoffed and walked away, muttering, "Pathetic." If only she knew. I turned back to my laptop, my heart pounding. The first chapter of my revenge had begun, and neither Jessica nor Ryan had any idea what was coming. The morning after Jessica caught me on that call, I sat at my desk at Ryan's office pretending to go through spreadsheets. In reality, my phone buzzed nonstop with emails from the investor and new artisans signing up to my platform. Every ding of a new notification was a reminder that I wasn't the loser they thought I was. I was building something real, something powerful, something that didn't depend on Ryan's charity. But at the company, Ryan's cruelty only escalated. He treated me like a prop, dragging me into meetings only to belittle me in front of others. One day, after I quietly corrected a minor mistake in his numbers, he slammed his pen on the table and sneered, "If you're so smart, Ethan, why don't you try running a company instead of leeching off mine?" The room erupted in nervous laughter. My jaw clenched, but I stayed silent. If only he knew. Outside of work, Jessica grew increasingly cold. She rolled her eyes when I got home late, assuming I was slaving away at Ryan's useless assignments. "You'll never get anywhere if you keep being this average," she'd say, her voice dripping with contempt. Every insult just added another brick to the wall I was building inside my heart, a wall that separated me from her completely. Meanwhile, my platform exploded. The venture capital funding came through, giving me the resources to scale. I hired a small but brilliant team in secret, people who believed in my vision. Orders skyrocketed as buyers around the world craved authentic American-made goods. Artisans who had once struggled to survive were suddenly thriving, and they praised my platform for giving them life again. Their gratitude fueled me even more. At night, while Jessica slept, I reviewed growth charts and revenue projections. The numbers soared higher every week. Within 6 months, my company was generating more profit than Ryan's clothing line had made in 2 years. But I kept it quiet, not because I was afraid, but because revenge tastes best when it's unexpected. The first crack appeared when Ryan's sales started dipping. Cheaper international competitors were eating into his market. He grew frustrated, snapping at employees, barking orders. Jessica noticed too. One night at dinner, she sighed, Ryan's been so stressed lately. Business isn't what it used to be. Then she glanced at me with that familiar sneer. Not that you'd understand real business struggles. I almost laughed out loud. Real business struggles? I was carrying an entire growing empire on my shoulders, while her brother's so-called empire was slowly rotting from the inside. But I stayed quiet, savoring the irony. Then came the day Ryan discovered my secret. I was in the office when my phone rang. It was one of my team members. Panicked. "Ethan, we got a problem. Ryan's company just reached out pretending to be a buyer. They were fishing for information about our platform. I think they know it's yours." My stomach twisted. I had worked so hard to keep my identity hidden, to let the company stand on its own merit. But apparently, success doesn't stay invisible for long. That evening, Ryan stormed into my cubicle, his face red with fury. He slammed a printout onto my desk. It was an article from a business magazine, featuring my startup as one of the fastest-growing platforms in the country. My name was right there in bold letters. "You've got to be kidding me," he growled. "This is you? This little side hustle? While I've been giving you a paycheck out of pity, you've been building this?" I didn't flinch. I met his glare and simply said, "Looks like it's more than a side hustle now." His jaw clenched. For the first time since I'd known him, Ryan had no clever insult ready. He just stood there, seething, before finally spitting out, "You think this makes you better than me? You'll regret this, Ethan. Nobody betrays me and gets away with it." That night, Jessica confronted me. She waved the same article in my face, her eyes blazing. "How could you keep this from me? From us? You've been lying this whole time." I stared at her, stunned by her words. Lying? That's what she called it? Months of enduring her contempt, of sacrificing my pride, of building something in silence because she never believed in me. And now I was a liar? "I didn't tell you," I said coldly, "because you would have laughed at me, just like you laughed at every idea I ever had. You didn't want a husband, Jessica. You wanted someone you could control, someone who would bow down to you and your brother. That's not me." Her face twisted with rage, but underneath, I saw something else. Fear. Fear that the man she had dismissed as pathetic was suddenly more powerful than she could handle. Word spread fast. Investors poured more money into my company, and media outlets covered my rise. Meanwhile, Ryan's empire began to crumble under pressure from competitors and his own arrogance. Stores started closing. Employees began leaving. The once untouchable Ryan Carter was bleeding, and I was the one holding the knife without even lifting a finger. One evening, Ryan showed up at my office unannounced. Not the company office he gave me, but my new office, sleek, buzzing with energy, filled with people who respected me. He barged in like he owned the place, his suit wrinkled, his eyes wild. "You think you won, Ethan," he hissed. "This isn't over. You stole this from me. You used me." I stood calm and steady. "I didn't steal anything. I built this. Alone. While you spend your time tearing me down, I was building something real. And now, you can't stop it." For a moment, he just stared at me. Then, with a bitter laugh, he said, "You'll regret crossing me. You don't know who you're dealing with." But I did know. I was dealing with a man who had built his life on belittling others, on riding the coattails of his family's money. And now, without those crutches, he was crumbling. Jessica tried to save face. She acted supportive in public. But at home, the cracks were obvious. She begged me to bring Ryan into my company, to merge with him, to help family. Her voice was softer now, lacking the venom it once carried. But I remembered every insult, every laugh, every time she told me I was worthless. And so I smiled at her and said, "Family? You only remembered I was family now that I don't need you anymore." Her silence was answer enough. The tables had turned. For the first time, I was the one in control. And it was only the beginning, because revenge wasn't complete yet. Not until Jessica and Ryan felt the full weight of everything they had done to me. Not until they lost. The city skyline looked different from the top floor of my new office. Brighter, sharper, alive with opportunity. 6 months ago, I was sitting in Ryan's boardroom, swallowing humiliation after humiliation. Now, I stood in my own corner office, running a company worth more than his entire clothing chain at its peak. But power wasn't enough. Not yet. I didn't want just success. I wanted justice. For every smirk, every insult, every time Jessica and Ryan treated me like I was worthless, I wanted them to feel the same helplessness they once forced on me. And soon they did. Ryan's company collapsed faster than anyone expected. Competitors took over his markets. Suppliers pulled out and investors abandoned ship. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. Bankruptcy loomed, and Ryan Carter, the golden boy of his family, was suddenly a cautionary tale whispered in business circles. I'll never forget the night he showed up at my apartment. His once-tailored suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, and for the first time, there was no arrogance in his voice, only desperation. "Ethan," he muttered, his voice shaking, "I need your help. Investors are gone. I don't know what else to do. You've got the resources, the connections. If you merge with me, we can save the Carter brand." The Carter brand. The same brand he'd rubbed in my face. The same empire he'd used to belittle me. I leaned against the doorframe, staring at him. "Why should I save you, Ryan? When I was drowning in your company, you never once offered me a hand. You laughed while I struggled." He swallowed hard. "I know. I screwed up, but we're family. Please." The word family tasted like poison coming from his lips. I almost pitied him. Almost. But then I remembered his smirk, his voice calling me the charity case, Jessica's laughter as she joined in. I shook my head. "You were never my family. And now you're not my problem." I closed the door on him, leaving him in the hallway, broken and defeated. Jessica's mask slipped soon after. She had always thrived on Ryan's success, basked in the glow of his reputation. But now, with Ryan disgraced, she turned her focus to me. Suddenly, the contempt was gone. She became sweet, attentive, almost desperate. She cooked dinners, praised my achievements, tried to slip back into the role of a loving wife. But I wasn't the same Ethan she had once dismissed. I saw through her like glass. One night, over dinner, she finally broke down. "Ethan, I know I've been hard on you. I made mistakes, but I didn't mean it. I was scared. I thought you'd never be more than average, and I was wrong. You've proven yourself. You're incredible. Please don't shut me out now." Her voice cracked, tears glistening in her eyes. Once, that might have melted me. Once, I might have believed her. But now, I only saw a woman terrified of losing the lifestyle she thought she deserved. "You didn't love me, Jessica," I said, my tone cold. "You loved what you thought I could become for you. And when I wasn't enough, you tried to break me. You don't get to come back now that I've rebuilt myself without you." Her face crumpled. She tried to argue, to swear that she truly cared. But deep down, we both knew the truth. The Jessica I married was gone the moment she chose pride over partnership. A month later, I filed for divorce. She fought it, of course, screamed, begged, threatened, but the papers went through, and for the first time in years, I felt free. Ryan disappeared from the spotlight. His empire dissolved, his name dragged through the mud. I later heard he'd moved to another city, working a modest job far beneath the throne he once sat on. The irony wasn't lost on me. He had mocked me for being average, and now he was less than that. As for Jessica, she tried to cling to the life she was losing. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she struggled to find her footing, jumping from one failed relationship to another, always chasing the wealth she thought would make her happy. And me, I thrived. My platform became a household name, a bridge between creators and buyers across the world. The media called me a visionary, an innovator. But to me, I was just a man who refused to stay down when the world tried to bury him. One night, sitting in my office with the city lights glittering below, I thought back to the man I had been, the man who let Jessica and Ryan tear him apart. And I smiled, because that man was gone. In his place stood someone stronger, sharper, unbreakable. Revenge hadn't just destroyed them. It had rebuilt me. And that, in the end, was the sweetest victory of all. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.